Hello, Tim. How are you doing today? You well?
I'm loving it.
Good stuff. Living the dream in lockdown, are you?
It's not bothering me in the least.
Brilliant, brilliant stuff. And I hear you're tucked away in sunny Surrey, is it?
Essex, Epping Forest. So I've got lots of tourist cyclists going past my front door, annoying me immensely because they're in my forest.
Brilliant. In your forest. Well, I'm glad you're having a bit of time to enjoy the relaxation. So Tim, we're really delighted to say is going to be joining the Edge webinar on Friday the 29th. Tim is a digital marketing trainer and consultant who works for the likes of Google, e-consultancy and the CIM, the Chartered Institute of Marketing. Really, really pleased to have Tim on board. He's going to be talking about the 6 principles of the psychology of persuasion. Is that right, Tim? Along those lines? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, well, that's what I was expecting to talk about. So I'm glad we agree. Yeah, the principles were coined in a famous book by Robert Cialdini, who, at the risk of being slanderous, has been rewriting the same book for the past 20 years. He must need a new wing on his house occasionally or something, I don't know. But it was really that first book that made his name and probably, if I'm being brutally honest, delivered the most value. If you've read that book, then the rest of his books are kind of optional reading, I would suggest.
Right. That's interesting. So you're going to be covering like a holistic overview and a summary of the 6 principles. Is that right?
Yes. Well, I would hope to not only outline the principles themselves, but also to give academically based examples of some of the studies that they are derived from. Because Cialdini did not receive these in some sort of fever dream from a deity. What he did was review the available literature on persuasion, on psychological studies, and try and boil down what he found to be the most compelling studies, the most powerful predictive studies of how to persuade people, how to influence people, and then give those taxonomize those into, it turns out, 6 groups, and to give those 6 groups names. So it's an artifice, it's an artificial construction, as lots of things are, but it's very useful, and it's been widely adopted in marketing, in sales, in many areas. And it's one of those things that if you're paying attention to the world, a lot of them will make intuitive sense, but like many things that make intuitive sense, that seem like common sense after someone's told you about them, like, oh, of course, yeah, it's useful to have them explicitly listed so that when you're thinking about how to do something or what direction to take, you've got like a list in your head that you can work through to say, well, I can try them all one by one, or I can maybe make a judgment call about which one of these 6 techniques seems to make most sense right now. So they're not just academically interesting, but they are, and have been proven to be repeatedly, to be practically useful in a wide variety of contexts.
I find that really interesting. So in my opinion, this is just my opinion, but sales and marketing are becoming more and more closer drawn together, and sales has been changing over the past few years, but also particularly now in these times, I think it's really going through a transformation. So how important, and I know this is quite a broad and loose question, but how important is the psychology now of persuasion and the sales process and the digital marketing process? How important is it within the process now, would you say?
I think it's still very important. I think there's 2, I'm sure there's more than 2 things to say on this, but the 2 things that immediately occur is, number one, that we're engaged in a weird form of arms race, because as consumers or as potential recruits or as potential clients get better and better informed about how they're being sold to or marketed to, then of course the person doing the marketing or the selling or the recruiting has to be aware of this, and then either become more sophisticated or use different techniques, or use the same techniques in a different way. And I would argue that you're probably going to end up doing some version of the same techniques in a different way, or pivoting, because however sophisticated we think we all are, we're all working off very, very old hardware. So you're just an evolved ape. And so some of these principles really do dive down into, basically, this is a separate topic we can talk about at a different time, evolutionary psychology. So, you are programmed to respond to the world in a certain way. You might differ that programming or interpret it differently based on the context, the culture, the society, and how you've been, how people have tried to influence you in the past. All of those things will filter how you respond to a stimulus. But the basic fact of the matter is you are programmed in a certain way. And so one of these principles, for instance, is scarcity. Spoilers. So the principle of scarcity is a very base one. Why do you think as soon as lockdown was announced, everyone went panic buying? Everyone started hoarding. One reason was because everyone else was. If everyone else starts panic buying, even if you know it's wrong and illogical and not the right thing to do, you're thinking, well, if I leave it too late, there'll be nothing left to buy. So that's the principle of scarcity. That's like evolutionary psychology, principles of persuasion 101. It's a very base thing that, you know, as an ape, you will not survive if you do not respond to scarcity. If you are a squirrel that does not store nuts for winter, when the nuts start running out, you will not survive. Therefore, the gene, the DNA, that programs you to respond to scarcity gets passed down the generations because it works. If you're the squirrel or the ape that doesn't respond to scarcity, you're going to get wiped out. So your gene of not caring about scarcity doesn't get passed down through the generations. So that's the evolutionary explanation of one of those principles of scarcity. So that's not changing anytime soon, unless we ascend to the heavens and become ethereal creatures playing harps, which is unlikely based on evidence. The other thing is big data. So psychology still matters, but because big data, you know, these tracking apps that people are talking about in our current situation is becoming more and more prevalent, if you start developing learning algorithms, predictive algorithms, that will match your behavior to other people's behavior and therefore say, well, these people ended up behaving like this, so therefore we can predict that, you know, faced with the same stimulus or the same message, you're highly likely to respond in a particular way. That's an interesting way in which artificial intelligence and these sorts of algorithms might in some way supplant psychology. But I would suggest that the tests that you would run on the data set to see, well, what sorts of messages people respond to best will be informed by psychology. So even though you're using big data and you're using algorithms, maybe not now, but in the future, at a fundamental level, the hypotheses that you formulate and the tests that you run are still highly likely to be influenced at some level by some of these psychological principles, findings, studies, whatever you want to call them.
That's fascinating. You obviously know what you're talking about.
I just know some long words.
You got a dictionary under there, haven't you?
Always.
So do you think, because you know, like you kind of touched on it before, we do have some like deeply ingrained kind of psychological beliefs. Do you think there are some, I mean, without kind of trying to sell the event and seeming like it's salesy, but do you think there are some kind of principles that we could quickly adapt to help us get into a better frame for persuasion and to kind of deliver the principles of persuasion that you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of those things where there are. It's like any profession. I think there are certain skills, a certain set of knowledge that you should have in order to consider yourself to be a reasonably well-educated practitioner of that knowledge. Now, you can either gain that knowledge through experience and through observation and through listening to what's going on in the office, or you can make an effort to actively educate yourself as to, you know, what the science, the research, whatever it is, in a more formal academic way of a representation of that knowledge. And to be brutally honest, that's a quick way of doing it. Now, how you apply those techniques is up to your own personality and your own judgment, because there's no guarantee of success. If there was a guarantee of success, you know, I'd be a multimillionaire. We'd all be hitting our sales targets every quarter, and we'd all be living in a house with a swimming pool with a beautiful partner. And, you know, the amount of people who are doing that, the group of that is quite small. And God bless them for doing it. You know, I no way wish them ill, so they leave it all to me in their will at all. But it's no guarantee of success. And if you'll forgive a slight digression and indulgence, I studied human-computer interaction, a master's at UCL under Professor John Long. And he had he spent a long time thinking about, you know, why can't we guarantee success in things like design, marketing, sales, recruitment, the squishy things that involve people? And he came up with a conception that I think is really useful, even if it's a bit geeky. You only need to hear it once and you can forget it. But I think it helps frame the question, which is certain things are a science, chemistry, physics, 100% predictable. If you could go back in time with sufficient scientific knowledge, you would be a wizard, because it's a superpower. I can predict the future. I can mix chemicals and magic happens reliably because I know science and you don't. So that's science. On the other end of the scale, you have art, which is, your 8-year-old draws a picture. You think it's beautiful. I think it's a complete mess. But neither of us are right or wrong because it's in the eye of the beholder. Excuse me. And in a business context, I would say your opinion is your art. I don't care about your opinion. Your opinion doesn't matter because that's what weekends are for. If you want to go away and be a photographer at the weekends, God love you, go and do it. But I'm paying you to sell or recruit or market, whatever it is I'm paying you to do. And the problem is that many people, at some subconscious level, either want marketing, sales, science to be a science. So that if I just knew these secrets, or well-being even, I could solve the universe. I could solve any problem if I just knew the secret. Life is not that simple. It's not chemistry. It's not physics. Equally, it's not art. Marketing, sales, and recruitment. You can't just do what you like. You can't call the client any name you like and hope to sell to them. It's not going to work because they're not going to want to engage with you. There's things you're better off knowing than not. One being civility, perhaps. One being responding within 24 hours. That's a good rule of thumb, probably, as opposed to just, I'll get back when I feel like it. Because I think if I play hard to get, the client will want me more. Well, that might work once or twice, but as a rule of thumb, that's probably not going to work for you. And so what Professor John Long said was, what we're engaged in is something messy and in the middle called a craft, whereby there is base knowledge from the science end that you need to know. It doesn't matter, within reason, what profession you're involved in. If you're a carpenter, is a good example. If you're a sculptor, there's base knowledge, a salesperson, a recruitment consultant, there's base knowledge you need about psychology, demographics, the market. There's all sorts of things that you absolutely should know. But then when you apply that knowledge in the craft realm, because we're not in the science realm, that's when the art comes in. That's when you have to make the judgment call. You have to be creative. You have to make choices. And you won't know if the choice is the right choice or the wrong choice. It's your choice as a practitioner. And that's kind of an artistic choice. It's your feel, it's your gut, but it's informed by the knowledge. So long story short, there is stuff you need to know, and you're better off knowing it than not. It will make you better than if you didn't, but it's not a guarantee of success because this is a craft and not a science.
Wow, that's fascinating. That is absolutely fascinating. Yeah, I could talk for ages with you, Tim. I'm really looking forward to Friday the 29th. It's going to be a fantastic session. We're going to get posting and tickets will be in the links around on LinkedIn, and they'll be posted in this post. We're going to have a post that's going to be down there. And really looking forward to seeing you there, Tim, and seeing everyone else there. It's going to be a fantastic session. Lovely to meet you, Tim, and we will speak soon.
Looking forward to it. My pleasure.
Thanks again. Thanks a lot. Bye.